Hot Wheels has a great contest where they have just regular folks build outlandish cars to see which would make a great Hot Wheel toy.
Please subscribe, like, and share. Hello, good morning, good day, good evening, whatever part of the world you're at. Welcome to Ben Almi the Racing Channel. This horsepower quick take, we will deal with spark plugs. There are instances where you improve the cylinder heads, of course, added power comes with it, or your block configure is a little bit different, and you find out that with added compression or improved cylinder head, that you are a little bit on the hot side of the spark plugs. Just a tad bit. But what are the little tricks here and there that we can do to make it a productive weekend, especially when you're out there in the middle of the boonies and there's no auto parts, or this particular spark plug that you're running is not available for the moment. Then what do? Okay, if let's say you have one or two cylinders trying to show a hint of detonation or overheating, we will deal with that kind of scenario. Okay, because there are many times where your fuel system suddenly is not even enough because of the improvement on the cylinder. Your injectors might not be enough. Now you're on the lean situation that's in front of you. What do? Well, you can still salvage your weekend by doing some, especially if it's ignition related or spark plug related. And here they are. Before we proceed with this presentation, I would like to just put it forward out there that I've dealt many years with spark plug types, and the one that I've come across that works really good is NGKs. It's readable. It tells you a lot about the combustion situation by the coloration that's happening on the strap, on the center electrode. It's very telling, and it's able to give you a lot of information. Now, how much faith do I have? NGK book. I even have the whole range of kinds of spark plug. Then I switch over, cross-reference, so I can run an NGK all the time. In fact, most of the hard-running guys out there at the track are running NGKs because it tells you a story. And I'm not knocking everybody there. This is like black magic, but this black magic is less of a, should we say, this black magic is less of a mystery because it's able to show me a lot through colorization and all that. And I've seen guys do plug checks with Autolite, Champion, Motorcraft, all that, and I will be upfront with you. It does not show the true combustion situation. For example, years ago, I had to do a magazine project with somebody's race car out there, and they're doing a bunch of tests for a magazine, and they brought it to the track, and they invited me to come along because it was in fact my engine in that car. And they did a bunch of passes, and then they pulled the plugs and started reading it. And I looked at it, and this crew, they've been racing for a while. I looked at the spark plug that they have on the spark plug tray, and I'm looking. I said, what do you guys see? They go, well, I think it's burning right. It's burning okay. See, do it right there, the tan color. I go, oh, okay. So, and they said, well, you have a better system? I said, yeah. You know what? Let's get some NGKs. Well, they didn't have at that time, so the next week we showed up with NGKs. And they said this car is burning good, it's running great. And I said, okay, now let's put the NGKs for that weekend. It was a magazine test, and the writer was there as well. So here we go. We showed up at the track, and we put the NGKs in, made a bunch of passes, and we have set aside for reference the old plugs that came out of it. We had about 6 or 7 runs in it, and put the NGKs fresh set. Made a pass, and said, let's make another pass, make it 2 passes so it'll start to colorize. And we cut off on the finish line a clean cut and towed it back. That's how you check your plugs. You don't try to idle down to the pits because it'll colorize and it'll tell you a difference. You have to cut at the end of the top end and cut clean. If you cut the ignition off and it backfires, start over again. It's going to colorize that and it'll show a darker hue on the spark plug color. So here we go. We made the pass. After 2 passes, we pulled the plugs out. And I looked at it and I showed the owner. I go, look at this. It looks like it came out of the box. It's clean, like it didn't even run. He goes, huh? Could we do a 3rd run or 4th run? I said, it's already telling me you're running lean. Anyway, he did 2 more passes, pulled the plugs again. Still no color. I said, definitely you are running way too lean. But the outer lights said it was fine. Well, I don't think so. I don't know how people read these plugs or other brands. I don't know how they do it. It's probably they know something I don't, but this is telling me so. So I looked at the plugs again. I looked at his carburetor. The float is okay, and I said, I pulled out the jetting for that particular series carburetor. I also have a reference kit like this NGK book of Holley list numbers, and they'll tell me exactly what came in. You know, if it's a 3310-1 or -2, -3, 750, same thing. The plugs were correct. There's nothing wrong with this engine. I said, I suspect you have a fuel delivery problem. Oh, but the pressure is working good. It's holding. Not necessarily, because you could have the pressure holding, but not necessarily the volume to completely, supply that engine with enough fuel. I think you have a fuel delivery problem. So we call it a day. So I got Holley, whoever then, I think I gave him another fuel pump. Or was it a Carter? No, it was a Holley red. So we end up with a Holley red. Put it on. Now with the same spark plug that looks still brand new, he made a pass down the track. On the first pass, we took it out, it's already showing color. Second pass, the color is even more intensified. It was rich, a little on the brownish, light brown color. So I called for a reduction in the mains. We took one numbers out, all the way around. Went back out, boom. Now it cleared out. Now it's showing the true color that I want. That is what I'm looking for. And we bumped the timing forward. Okay, one thing you got to realize too. A lot of people will read plugs, even if it's an NGK or what, and they say, oh, it's running rich, or this is too cold. Well, actually, you think it's too cold? Because sometimes you don't have enough ignition timing. If your timing, let's say the engine calls for, ideally, Chevrolet's 36 degrees, Ford 34 degrees total, and then you're only running 32 or 30, or for a Chevrolet, you're only running, instead of 36, 32, that plug will always show rich. So you start pulling down on the main jets or on your injectors. What you're actually doing there is that ignition timing creates more heat in the chamber and starts to colorize the plug the way it should. And if you don't have enough ignition lead in it, it'll run cold and the spark plug would look like it's running rich. So remember that. So this engine was running 34 degrees total. In fact, at that particular day, the altitude of the track, we were at 36. So it suddenly showed color. And not only that, it started picking up, I think, about 2 or 3 tenths. Then they go, man, all these years we're running the outer light. Yeah, and you're about 3 tenths slower. Because you thought the plug was correct. The reading was correct. You guys were running way too lean. It's falling over. If you're running rich, it falls over gradual. If you're running lean, it falls off like a log. Okay, so that was a good revelation for them. And today, presently this guy runs nothing but NGKs. Okay, NGK does not pay me for this thing. Okay, let me make that clear. But if you look around the track for the hard running cars, boosted, NA, turbo, and GKs, and they're reading it. So here we go. Finally, it made a believer out of them because they realized, wow, all these years, they've been running like 3 or 4 years or forever with auto lights. They were tuning it wrong. And again, another guy that I helped, he's got a V8 Vega and he had champions. And I put the NGKs in and I said, look, you're running too rich. You got to cut down on that mains. After we did about 2 or 3 runs on the NGK. So I pulled back the mains, and also bumped the timing forward to put some coloration, added color on the sparklers. I thought it would look somewhat cold, but it was the right heat range. It was a crossover to what that head called for. So I said, where's your timing set at? And he said, so-and-so, way too low. So I bumped the timing forward, corrected the main jet size, and now he was running way quick. I think it was like 4/10 or almost half a second. It was that far off. Sometimes they think, oh man, you're a brilliant engine builder. Not really. I just happen to tune it maybe a little. I may be an average engine builder, but if I tune it correctly, that's where you have the advantage. Okay, 2, 3/10, 4/10, half a second. So this guy, I showed him what I did, and he did his fastest pass of his life on that V8 Vega. And a week later, no, 2 weeks later, he shows up back at the track and running half a second off again. And I look, he took off the NGKs, he's reading the outer lights again. And slow. Sometimes you can lead the horse to water, but they will not drink. This guy, you lead him to the horsepower, and he doesn't like it. He wants to be slow. Oh my God. I couldn't believe it. And my buddy says to me, forget that guy. He's a lost cause. And you know, it's amazing how you show, and like I always said, bad habits are hard to break. And you know, it's amazing how you show, and like I always said, bad habits are hard to break. I guess he's so trusted into the whatever spark plug was running at. Oh my God, it's amazing. But anyway, here we go. So, if let's say you did improvements on your cylinder head or something on your block that got better, now you compromise your fuel system. Now it's not enough, or now you made more power, or increase the compression or the boost. Now it requires a colder plug. But for the meantime, if there's an improvement that you fall off the edge, like they say, that you need a colder plug, but there's no plug available, here's what you got to do. On the board, this is a regular spark plug. All right. When you look at the ground strap and the center electrode, it's squared off. Now, what I look for when I'm at the racetrack, I usually have my spark plug, reader, and you look in there and you flick this light and you can see through all the way to the porcelain. I have one of those, but sometimes I show up at the track to help somebody tune their cars, and I say, "You have a spark plug magnifying glass or a spark plug tool?" They go, "No, we don't." I go, "Okay." So what I do is this spark plug, I tried to draw as best I could. I hope you guys don't criticize me for this thing. But anyway, I usually have a spark plug reader. It's like a little lens with a light in it, and you could go like this and look through all the way down to the porcelain, and you can look for little specks inside the spark plug. But sometimes I end up at the track and I tell the guys, let's pull the plug and read. And usually only the serious guys have a spark plug checker. And a lot of them They just look at it, they eyeball, oh, it looks good. Well, there, you know, those little specks, detonation, you can't really see it. Inside there, the fire ring, you can't see that either. So what happens here is that I go like this to the sun. Or sometimes I get a flashlight and I shine a flashlight right on the back of the spark plug. What am I trying to see? Here's what I'm trying to look at. This is the way the spark plug center electrode and the ground strap looks like. Very sharp. Okay, the edges, that's what I'm looking for. When I see the ground strap start to roll right here, the edges start to roll, or sometimes they lift up, or they look like a like an ice cream cone right here, and then the edges of the ground strap start to roll, it is already starting to melt. When it's already starting to melt, watch out, okay? So I look in there on the sun, or if I have a flashlight, I look behind it, and I look at the edges if it's starting to roll over. When they start to roll over, that plug is getting hot. You could also be very lean, okay? Now, what if you're lean and okay, what if you're right on your air-fuel ratio and just so happen your spark plug is just a tad on the hot side? What can you do? Well, first thing you got to confirm is, do you even have the right heat range on the spark plug? How can you tell? Usually, the spark plug has to expose 2 threads to combustion colorization or combustion color. When you look at the spark plug there, 2 threads worth should have combustion residue in there. That would put you pretty much on the right spot as far as heat range is concerned. Okay, because a lot of heads out there you're not familiar with. It could be an import or domestic, or whatever engine you have. You got to see 2 thread with combustion color in it, and the rest of it is inside the casting itself. Now, if you have that 2 threads worth of combustion colorization on the spark plug, just like this picture, and when you do have that, and you're still getting this rounding off on the edge, what can you do is, first, you can cut the tip of the ground strap to something like this. What happens here is that you made the ground strap shorter, it's closer to the shell where it dispels the heat. When you cut it shorter, it lessens the chance of that tip of the spark plug starting to glow or starting to melt, and then you have pre-ignition. Okay? Now, smart. Some spark plugs like from NGK and the others also have that configuration. A little short, but most of them are like this. Now, some have a fine wire, real thin wire here. Now, with what you did here is that you actually made the spark plug function a little bit better when it's side to side, because you see the point here? Point on the ground strap and point on the center electrode. It's easier to jump the spark when you have it like this. Okay, like this before, it's firing right here. Now when you cut it, you have this edge and that edge. It's easier to jump it from one point to the other point, just like it does here. Now, if you did that and you still see a little bit, or if you really think it's severe, you cut this even more and then you bend it in. Okay? You can bend it in and cut it. And what you've made, the ground strap shorter, it has a tendency to run cooler. Okay? Because the longer it is out there in the combustion, elements of combustion or inside the combustion chamber, it will tend to overheat. But when you shorten the heat path, it gets closer to the shell, it tends to run cooler. So that's one. Second, like I said earlier about the two exposed threads, when you have a lot of these spark, like what we run, it's a big block Chevy spark plug on these Fords. Basically, that's what they are. You know, I think it's a FR9 NGK. You can add washers. When you add washers, you know, the one that comes from the factory is one. You add another one on top of it. The purpose of that is it'll sink in this whole thing instead of two thread showing in the combustion there. Now it's gone. It's further into the head gasket or to the combustion chamber. What it does is it acts like a shorter center ceramic. It's closer to the water jackets, to the shell of the spark plug, and then to the water jackets. You basically recess it in, and also you drop the compression a tad bit. Remember, you're about 16 to 1, 15 to 1. I think what actually happens is that, well, no, it's not that, I know. When you have like 2-3 cc, it's like half a point of compression or even more on a lot of these NASCAR head or state-of-the-art cylinder head. 16.5 to 1, I tell you, you lose 2-3 cc's on a standard head, that might be, my gosh, not even a quarter point, okay? But with these things here, with the new style cylinder heads, very shallow chamber, 2-3 cc's, yeah, you're going down. You're about 3/4 of a point drop in compression. So you think you got, 16.5 to 1, you actually got probably 15.7 or 15.8 or whatever. So anyway, take note of that. When we talk about compression ratio and volume, when you add a little bit of washer underneath that spark plug, for example, you have those new small chambered NASCAR cylinder heads, 40 cc combustion chamber on a 16.5 compression ratio, and you just add a little bit more cc, 3 cc's in particular, 41, 42, 43, and your 16.5 to 1 compression ratio becomes 15.4, between 15.4 15.5. A full compression point was lost, thereby making your engine somewhat resistant to detonation or pre-ignition by dropping the compression a little bit, by adding a little washer on these new style cylinder heads. Something to think about. So when you add the extra washer, it drops this into the combustion chamber, which makes it run cooler because it fools the center ceramic into thinking it's closer to the water jackets by it being sunken in, also the drop in compression. So those are one way of doing that. Therefore, when you always look at these things, those are band-aid just to get you by, all right? Or let's say you're out of spark plugs and you got another run to do and you're kind of shaky on your heat range or whatever. That's washer, get the center electrode, you can make this shorter than that, okay? And then when you put the spark plug filler gauge, you go this way, okay? You can't go there, it's not gonna work. You put your filler gauge this way. And that's how you're gonna get this to work. So the shorter ground strap makes it run cooler. Adding another, those washers underneath the spark plug with two threads exposed. Now you suck it in deeper into the combustion chamber, it's going to run cooler. So those two will definitely give you a band-aid for the moment. Okay, so it's a help. And now, lastly, I got a call from somebody before, not that long ago, and he said, I don't put any dome on my Honda because, dome gets in the way of the flame front. And I was thinking, dome on the flame front. Why are you concerned about that? He said, because the dome gets in the way of, that's what everybody's saying. I said, how can the dome get in the way of your 4V heads when here, let me get this thing. Now, he said the spark plug gets on the way. So this was his mindset. Here's the dome on his big block Chevy. Spark plug is sitting over here. So when you start the spark, it goes up towards the dome and basically splits the combustion chamber into two sections, this side and that side. And it says detrimental to the flame front. This is a pro stock big block Chevy. This is 12-to-1. This is 15-8 because they rolled the heads over and everything. Spark plug's over here, higher location as well. It doesn't have to navigate the dome. Now, that said, I go, so you're concerned about having a dome in your Honda? You shouldn't be. He goes, why not? The dome splits the chambers in half, right? I said, yeah, if you're like this. But the truth of the matter is, your spark plug sits on top of the combustion chamber. It blows this way. It does not concern your engine that you have a dome in it, and you shouldn't worry about that. Okay? And then he was quiet and realized he's been reading too much into statements about dome and spark plug location. Yes, on a V8 or any inline with a spark plug on the side. I said, your Honda has a spark plug on top, and so is the other import in German, Euro, or whatever, Coyotes. They're sitting on top. So it doesn't have to go around the flame front to get to the other side. It's on top, and they just ignite flame propagation from the very top. So it's not an issue. Now, since we're part of the dome and spark plug, I've always stated that once you initiate combustion, it goes from a burn to an explosion, and the quench kind of helps us from slowing down that flame front from propagating to an explosion. So it goes burn, boom, okay? And let me make this clear. Dome is bad if we're talking about V8, okay? But a slight dome is not too bad, really. So this 1960 style, brand new pro stock, hardly any dome and higher compression. But dome is not always a negative. Remember, the more nitrous you put into the engine, the faster the flame front gets to be. And guess what? The dome not only gives you compression, okay, but actually acts like a damper. And I'll get to this more detail, that on a nitrous engine, that dome helps you out, because that tends to slow down the flame front from, with lots of nitrous, 400 shot, 500 shot, or some guys are even more. The dome is your friend because it has a tendency to dampen that flame front, to slow it down. It's like a speed bump, if I could keep it in that simple term. A dome will act as like a speed bump on a nitrous engine. So it may be bad for NA if it's too much, and it's a blessing in disguise on a nitrous engine. And on the next feature videos, I will expound on that. And for nitrous, dome is a friend. Okay? So thank you for tuning in, guys. Please like, subscribe, and share, and we'll keep this going. Thank you very much.